Welcome, friends. Today we're going to be discussing and reading through Wealth Magnet number 1, which is No Guilt. Most people's worldview of wealth is as a zero-sum game. A big impediment to attraction of wealth is the idea that the amount of wealth is floating around to be attracted is limited. If you believe it's limited, then you believe that each dollar you have came to you at someone else's expense. Your gain, another's loss. That makes your subconscious mind queasy. So it keeps your wealth attraction power turned down, never to full power. To let it operate at full power would be unfair and harmful to others. If you are a decent human being and you have this viewpoint, then you will always modulate your wealth attraction power. If too much starts pouring in too easily, guilt is produced as if it were insulin being produced by the pancreas after pigging out on a whole pizza. You can't help it. Your wealth magnetism will be turned down for you. Think about the words fair share. They are powerful, dangerous words. As an ethical, moral person, you probably think, hey, I don't want any more than my fair share. But that reveals belief that wealth is limited. If you believe wealth is unlimited, there's no such thing as a share of it. Everybody's share is unlimited. There's nothing to have a share of. There's only unlimited. Your fair share is all you can possibly attract, as is anybody and everybody else's. In business, there's a similar idea, market share. But again, that presumes a finite, limited market instead of an indefinitely expandable market. In the new economy, market share is one of the most antiquated of concepts. Boundaries are broken. Even the smallest of businesses can be global in reach thanks to links largely to the internet. Hint, hint. Consumers have access to a multiplied and multiplying range of choices. So classic brand loyalty has been replaced by search for an expectation of the thing that is precisely, perfectly appropriate. The market for all manner of goods and services is greater than ever before, yet the fragmentation of the market itself is greater and more complex than ever before. The attraction of wealth in this environment has little to do with somehow locking up a limited portion of a limited market, and everything to do with directly connecting with individuals and meeting their needs and interests. When you think in terms of being in the business of creatively meeting the needs and interests of individuals, it's obvious that the size of the market available to you is limited only by your own creativity and initiative. You know what? I wrote that down in my notebook here as one of the first bullet points. So I'm going to repeat it again. That way you can copy it down too. Maybe if you're listening to this as an audio, if you're watching this, if you don't already have a notebook, you should write it down, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat it. Let me go back to it here. When you think in terms of being in the business of creatively meeting the needs and interests of individuals, it's obvious that the size of the market available to you is limited only by your own creativity and initiative, which means it's not the economy that has control over the results that you get in your business. It's not anything but your own creativity and belief. So I thought that was awesome. Further, that whatever connection you create and accomplish has no relationship to what anyone else does, whether a lot or a little. Clinging to old ideas of limitation blocks access to new opportunity. A tale of two teenagers. And I love this metaphor, by the way. Imagine being a teenager in a family in severe financial trouble. Money is very scarce. There's you, two brothers, father and mother. When everybody sits down to dinner and mom puts the food on the table, you know that that's all the food there is. The bowl of mashed potatoes is all the mashed potatoes there are. You are hungry. You really want a big second helping of mashed potatoes. The bowl is right in front of you within easy reach, but instead of just reaching out, dragging it over, and scooping out a pile of potatoes, you stop to look around and see who has potatoes on their plate. You look to see if your fathers had plenty of potatoes. You hold back from fulfilling your desire out of concern that others may not yet have had their fair share, may be hungrier than you. You do not want someone else going hungry as a result of your appetite. I don't have to imagine that. I lived it. Now imagine a teenager in a family living an abundant life with great prosperity. When mom puts dinner on the table, you know there's plenty more where it came from. The refrigerator's full of food, so are the cupboards. There are always leftovers after dinner. You are hungry. You really want a big second helping of mashed potatoes. The bowl is right there in front of you within easy reach. Without a second thought, you reach out, drag the bowl over, and scoop out all the potatoes that you want. In these examples, of course, you're acting consciously. In the first case, in the financially troubled family, you consciously hold back, sacrifice, do not take what is right in front of you for the taking. Similarly, but subconsciously, if you believe at all on any level that wealth is limited, that there's not plenty to go around, you will hold back. You won't take everything that's right in front of you. Your emotions about wealth will be cautious, measured, restricted, suppressed, and timid. If you can make every last smidgen of belief that wealth is limited go away, your attraction of wealth will suddenly, automatically go from modulated, limited, and suppressed to full power, and opportunity, money, and wealth will quickly flow to you in greater quantities and at greater speed than you've ever before experienced. I'm going to repeat that one down because I wrote that one down too in my notebook. If you can make every last smidgen of belief that wealth is limited go away, your attraction of wealth will suddenly, automatically go from modulated, limited, and suppressed to full power, and opportunity, money, and wealth will quickly flow to you in greater quantities and at greater speed than you ever before experienced. I find that very interesting. There's just like a little picture for us to look at. People get ingrained in their heads that money taken from person A and moved to person B enriches person B at the expense of person A. Certainly the liberal politicians either believe it or pander to it, one or the other. Some religious doctrines and religious leaders posit this idea. There are lots of ways this belief might be firmly planted into your head, maybe even in elementary school math class. If Johnny has 4 pieces of candy and gives 2 of them to Jim, how many does Johnny have left? The answer needed to ace the quiz is 2. But the problem ignores the fact that Johnny can simply open his hand and have as many pieces of candy appear in it as he'd like. After all, there's no global shortage of candy. When you actually understand wealth, you know that Johnny can have 4 pieces, give Jim 2 pieces, but then have 42 pieces. What's even weirder and tougher for math teachers is that Johnny is much more likely to have 42 if he does give away 2 of the 4 than if he hoards the 4. But that's for another topic for a different place in this book. For now, let's keep it simple. The opposite of wealth attraction is wealth inhibition. So that's one of the first lessons of this book that I found. Go ahead and write that down in your notebooks. The opposite of wealth attraction is wealth inhibition. And you know what? Most people suffer from this. I know I do. I know growing up poor and poverty with a single mom, always broke, growing up on government assistance, all of that. I was totally ingrained to inhibit wealth. And I'm sure a lot of you are too. So that's why we need to read this book. Most people are so wealth inhibited, they never even think in terms of getting wealthy, which is so true. Most people think that getting wealthy is for the lucky, or the only way they'll ever get wealth is if they play the lotto. That's why so many people play the lottery. That's why so many people buy lotto tickets. They think that's the only way they could ever be wealthy, they could ever be successful, is by chance, by luck, by playing a game. That's why people go to Vegas and they get addicted to gambling and all this, because they don't understand that just working towards a goal and accomplishing wealth is possible for them. They're wealth inhibited. And say that 5 times fast. Okay, so their thoughts on the subject are limited to buying a lottery ticket or fantasizing about some unknown, long lost uncle leaving them a fortune in his will. But there are a lot of people who do at some point start seriously trying to figure out how they might convert their knowledge, ability, time, energy, and effort into real wealth. You may be in that group. It may be the reason you were attracted to and purchased this book. So a warning, the majority of people in this group never get traction, never get going, never get wealthy because they suffer from wealth inhibition. So if you suffer from wealth inhibition, admit it now. Say, I'm Kimberly Denise. I suffer from wealth inhibition and I plan on eradicating it right away. If you believe wealth is limited, if you view it as a zero-sum game. In fact, you know what? Just stop. Let's stop reading this right now. And I just want you to repeat after me. And then say your name. So I'm going to say my name, okay? I, Kimberly Denise, realize that I suffer from wealth inhibition. And I plan on taking action to eradicate it completely from my life so that attracting wealth in a great abundance will be easy and quick for me. Sweet. I hope you said that too. I hope you really believe it too. So if you believe wealth is limited, if you view it as a zero-sum game, you are inhibited. This inhibition affects all sorts of things you do or don't do, such as what you'll charge, for example, or who you'll ask for money. This is really important to those of us who are in home business, because as I read the next part, because I've read the first 3 chapters of this, and I decided, you know what, people need to hear this information, so I decided to record it. But just pay attention to the next portion that we read here, because you're going to really be able to relate to this if you're in business or in sales, actually. I've spent a lot of time working with people in sales, those who identify themselves as salespeople, like folks selling insurance, cars, fire alarms, as well as those who didn't identify themselves as salespeople, but are, like dentists and psychologists. 2 things are true for all of them that reflect wealth inhibition. One has to do with price. This is the bullet points. Write that down. Price. Most fear discussion of price. Fear-raising prices, are paranoid about pricing higher than their competitors. I have had to work long and hard to get some people to raise their prices or fees far beyond present levels, industry norms, or competitors' prices in order to charge what their services and expertise is really worth to their clientele. In numerous cases, I've forced fee or price increases of 200 to 2,000% with absolutely no adverse impact. That's how far underpriced a lot of people are. In these situations, we are not dealing with practical issues. We're dealing with the business person's own inhibitions and fears. Because this is such an important subject that can lead to such huge breakthroughs in a business, I developed an entire seminar on the subject of price elasticity, and you can check out his website if you want to take that course. Second is pulling the punch when closing the sale. So the first bullet point was what? Pricing. Our issue with asking for what we're worth, our issue with even accepting money for our services, our issue for telling somebody, you know, how much it costs to join our business. We're inhibited to reveal that sometimes. So the second bullet point here is pulling the punch when closing the sale. So closing. I sometimes joke about one of my own businesses, freelance advertising copywriting, where I routinely charge fees of $100,000 to $150,000 or more for a complete project, no less than $25,000 for a single ad or sales letter, plus royalties. I say that the primary requirement for getting such fees has little to do with my prowess as a copywriter and everything to do with my ability to keep a straight face and voice free of stammer when quoting the fee. This may be the reason a lot of art and antique dealers write the price down on a piece of stationery and slide it across the desk to you. There's truth in the joke. When the dentist quotes his $70,000 case to the patient, when the private residence club quotes the $250,000 membership fee, when anyone speaks any price or fee, there is the tendency for tremors, the temptation to discount without ever being asked, out of fear, inhibition, and presumption. In short, to pull the punch. Consider the salesman who goes into a person's home to sell fire alarms. I have a corporate client in this industry. The fire alarm salesman with the stuffed Dalmatian under his arm and the Burning House DVD marches in and discovers that he is in a place of relative poverty, at least by his standards. The 2 kids are on a threadbare carpet in the living room. They probably have good television, but pretty much everything else in the house is obviously hand-me-down, beat up, falling apart, springs sticking up out of the couch seat. He can clearly see that these people aren't doing well. Conversationally, he discovers Papa hasn't worked in 4 months, and one of the kids got some kind of problem that causes big medical bills, and on and on and on. The salesperson becomes increasingly queasy about closing these people on the $2,000 fire alarm sale, and in many cases, he will not close the sale. He will subconsciously pull his punches, accept the first objection easily, or he'll consciously, deliberately throw the game at the end, toss that one aside, and get out of there. This is an analogy to the way everyone behaves on all sorts of situations if operating from a belief of limited wealth. My friend Glenn Turner tells a story from his earliest selling days of actually being chased by someone who was mad that he wouldn't sell him a sewing machine. Glenn thought the person couldn't afford it, shouldn't go into debt to buy it, and obviously cut his presentation short and abruptly got up and left, only to be literally chased down the street and caught by the husband, who called him out on trying not to make the sale. "How dare you think for me? I've got a right to buy that thing for my wife if I want to." My speaking colleague, Zig Ziglar, has a similar story from his earliest days selling cookware about the customer that was saving up the money to put in the indoor plumbing. Discovering that they didn't even have indoor plumbing, Zig backed off and didn't try to close the sale on the cookware. And the people were annoyed. They really wanted the pots and pans. The husband said, "We can put the plumbing in later. Mama wants those pots now." The queasiness about price, about whom somebody is selling to, about their ability to pay, their ability to afford it, is all deadly. And the truth is, anytime you start to make those decisions for other people, it really reflects more about what's going on internally with you than it does with anything else. Oh, and by the way, if you were that fire alarm salesman who deliberately threw it through the sale, how would you feel about not exerting your best efforts if you turned on the TV news the next night and saw that family's house burned to the ground and they had died in the fire? Oops. There's something else to get clear about the people who are without money, that you perceive to be disadvantaged for one reason or another, and you question whether you should sell something regardless or whether you get any of their money or not. They're going to be without money next week too. The reason they're without money has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with your existence, what you sell or fail to sell, nor does it have anything to do with the way money works in the real world. It has to do with them. And whether you take it, somebody else takes it, the liquor store takes it, the church takes it, whoever takes it, I promise you, somebody's getting it. Because if they're without money now, they're going to be without money again. And most of them are going to be without money permanently because they never act on understanding of how money works. I know that sounds harsh, and you may not be a face-to-face salesperson and never need to sit across a desk or a table from someone you think can't afford it and sell to them anyway. But the truth of this particular situation is the bigger truth about the entire world of money and wealth. That truth is, whatever amounts you get has nothing to do with how much or how little anyone else has, ever. If you want your wealth attraction glowing and functioning at full power, you can't have any queasiness. You can't have any reluctance. You can't have any inhibition. You can't ever pull a punch. In the bigger sense, you have to understand that whatever financial position anyone you know is in, anyone you do business with is in, anyone period is in, has nothing to do with you. In the biggest sense, you have to understand that whatever the state of the economic affairs in the world, it has nothing to do with how much wealth you accumulate. Your wealth is addition for you, but subtraction for no one. So I wrote that one down too because it's bolded. So it's obviously more important than the rest of the text, although all of this is amazing, right? Unless and until you buy this premise hook, line, and sinker, you will always suffer from wealth inhibition. Here's a little example of about Gene Simmons from the band Kiss. It says, one of the many great masters of wealth attraction worthy of your study is Gene Simmons, creator of the rock band Kiss. In recent years, you may have seen Gene in the reality TV show about his life on A&E, Gene Simmons' Family Jewels. I think that was on a couple of years ago, actually. We had Gene as a guest speaker at one of the conferences we hold each year for our Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle members. Got to hear his life story and entrepreneurial strategies firsthand, and I spent a fair amount of time off stage kibitzing with him. I routinely recommend his book, Sex, Money, Kiss, as a good candid look into the way he made, candid look into the way a made-from-scratch multimillionaire entrepreneur, adept at wealth attraction, thinks about money. There we go. You may be offended or shocked, but you'll learn a lot from Gene. To be invited to our conferences, you need to only accept the complimentary membership offered on page 250. And then a quote from him is, be clear, be truthful. Stand there proudly, unapologetically, unabashedly, and say, I love cash. It will get me everything I want in life. Gene Simmons. Okay. And there's another story about Newman's Own. So that's the end of Wealth Magnet number 1. So moving on to Wealth Magnet number 2, go ahead and find the video and click, and I will see you over there.